I want to fly a straight line into the eye.
Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Ragusa is a trained pilot, but this flight goes against all pilot training.
There are times where we're just kind of hanging on, which is unnerving to a pilot.
The aircraft, a WC-130J.
What gives us the ability to fly through a thunderstorm is a sheet of paper, not the airplanes being beefed up. This is a regular C-130.
Nicknamed the Hercules, it's a heavy-duty, military-grade plane designed to take a beating. But is it a match for Hurricane Dorian's ferocious winds?
This is a very sturdy aircraft, but it's still dangerous, especially with us being so close to the ground. Could affect us pretty quick.
Welcome aboard.
8 times out of 10, it's like a bumpy car wash. The other 2 times, you can really get your money's worth.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. Your flight crew, a team of hurricane hunters, each a member with the Air Force Reserves. Today they're flying intentionally into harm's way in the name of potentially saving lives.
To get human beings into an area where they're usually not supposed to be and get that data so that we can use it, help improve lives for people on the coast.
Channel 9 on board the flight in a Category 4 Dorian as it stalled over the northern Bahamas. At this time, Dorian was a menacing storm actively taking lives and ripping homes apart. The National Hurricane Center forecast cone showed the system inching closer to the United States. Okay. Ragusa, the flight commander on today's mission. Long before he was flying into one of the planet's most destructive weather, he was surviving them as a child.
I had walked in the eye of 2 hurricanes and was in a building struck by a tornado.
So naturally, this was the career move that made sense, combining a love for aviation with a respect for Mother Nature.
I'm actually quite afraid of bad weather on the ground. For whatever reason, it just doesn't worry me as much as in the air. I think it's because in the air we're a movable object, so the bad weather just moves us. On the ground, you're dealing with immovable objects that the wind is trying to move.
The day starts with a simple morning briefing here at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Everybody gets a set of earplugs. I promise it will be noisy all day long and very obnoxious.
Bounce side on first leg in from the entry point.
Right now, our contract with the National Hurricane Center has us hitting the eye of the storm every 3 hours.
It's a serious job, but Ragusa's personality and sense of humor makes him perfect for the lead role.
We are not going to get hit by lightning today, probably. It is something that happens. We don't much like it, so we try to avoid it. We explode. Every time you get hit by lightning, it will leave an entry wound and an exit wound on the airplane. And so when we land, we have to tell maintenance, hey, we were struck by lightning, and they'll have to find that.
However, the greatest danger is in midair.
It is a very electronic airplane, so it is possible that it can mess up some of our components.
The plan this day is to be in the air for 10 to 12 hours, gathering data that'll immediately help forecasters at the National Hurricane Center narrow the cone of uncertainty and determine who will be most impacted by the storm. The last plane to survey the storm feeds us their data.
Pressure now 922 millibars, 922. Surface wind speeds 135 knots, weakening a bit.
That's good news.
Now it's our turn in the storm.
So in about 15 minutes, we should be getting close to the eye wall or hitting the eye wall.
The data is collected from sensors called drop zones. They're launched into the storm by the loadmaster.
All right, load, you getting ready? Over there, we're getting close. All right, Larry, let's make this your finest eye wall drop yet.
The plane flies at roughly 10,000 feet in a powerful hurricane. As the drop zone falls into the storm, it collects data all the way down to the surface, measuring the storm's winds, pressure, and location. Each drop zone roughly $800. They'll launch on average 20 on a mission. And the person who gets to decide where the plane flies to get the measurements doesn't sit in the cockpit.
Where the rubber meets the road is back in our weather officer station. So he or she, in this case Kyle today, is the one actually directing the flight. And so the pilots are giving up a little bit of control as to where we go.
You're trying to think ahead of what the airplane's doing and anticipate what other people, the data they may need from you so that you're in a position to get it for them. Give me 10 right. 10 right.
It looked like about 4 miles.
After we roll out, it's going to have that little one red cell. You want to go through that or go around it?
While Major Kyle Larson is calling the plays, Major John Garby has another important job.
Yeah, right there. Come on, go through it. Again, I'm not picking up anything. Okay, super intense.
Garby is a navigator and tasked with keeping the plane out of violent turbulence.
With the decisions we're making, we're still factoring in what we want to avoid in serious turbulence like that, especially from tornadoes.
Because while the airplane is built with engine-driven propellers meant to handle the sheer force of the water and wind, it's certainly not hurricane-proof. The pilot must still safely maneuver the plane. Ragusa uses a technique called crabbing to punch through the eye wall.
Called that because crabs don't walk straight. Today, as we head to the eye of the stream, the wind is going to be coming from our left across to our right, pushing the airplane to the right. I want to fly a straight line into the eye. People think of a hurricane as being a circular wind pattern. It's really only circular if you're God looking down. In this airplane, the wind is always only blowing in one direction.
But flying into a storm like this isn't that simple. Even though Ragusa has been a pilot for decades, he says inside a raging hurricane at this altitude, he always expects the unexpected.
All storms have names because they have personalities. And we don't necessarily know the personality of this storm or the mood that this storm's in until we get there, even though I've flown it 4 times already.
Dorian beginning to show signs of personality even before we get to the eye.
One little flash out the left side. About the time we were getting the bumps, the pilot said he saw some lightning.
The team closely monitors the radar.
As of right now, based on where the eye is, we should be cleared to go for the full alpha pattern. I feel that's anything unsafe, I will let you know.
Then, all of a sudden, the otherwise smooth flight turns interesting.
It might get a little bumpy here for just a sec.
We've made it to the eye wall,
Grab a hold of something.
where the strongest winds of the hurricane are, and the pilot loses control.
And at that moment, the storm for moments takes over what the airplane's doing.
On the other side of the intense wind and rain, clear blue skies, a sign we've survived the worst. It's a brief reprieve, but more gut-turning turbulence awaits on the other side. They do a total of 4 penetrations through the eye wall, flying in alpha pattern to fully scope out the storm.
We stay out in the storm for 6 hours, and we're all needing to work as a pretty cohesive team the whole time.
Garby knows exactly the level of teamwork it takes, having flown B-51 bombers before becoming a hurricane hunter 6 years ago. He says it's the thrill of the unknown that keeps this job just as exciting every day.
This is ultimately why we do it. It's our bread and butter. The coolest part is being able to go out and execute the mission and be a part of the crew that does that.
On this flight, 2 members of the Navy are also on board. Captain Beth Sanabia is sending a different sensor into the storm. This one measures the conditions in the water.
Look at the ocean, so what's happening underneath the storm. The storm draws heat and moisture from the ocean surface as the winds blow over it, and that's what helps intensify the storm, so it's important to know the characteristics of the ocean, how much fuel is really available for the storm.
Their data goes into the hurricane models, but it's also used for research. Models are imperfect themselves, but with better initial conditions, big improvements are being made in forecast accuracy.
Some of what we do, it's really cutting-edge science.
NOAA is also flying into Dorian today at a different altitude. Their mission strictly to study Dorian's behavior and the atmospheric pattern that's steering the storm. The Air Force gathers the data that's plugged into the models. NOAA's research helps to build better forecast models. Both put their lives on the line to potentially save others in the storm's path.
Millions of people are in the potential path. It's important to bring, every technological aspect you have, every scientific, skill, every arrow in your quiver to kind of apply to the problem and try to do the best, help the forecasters the best that you can so that they can make the best forecast possible.
Dorian's forecast is improved by 30% because of this flight.
The eye hasn't moved very quick today. When we prepared it earlier, it was less cross-track movement, actually half a mile. Normally they move a lot quicker than that. This one, as I predicted, was going to slow down and stall before it hopefully starts that turn to the north to stay offshore.
After leveling parts of the Bahamas, this storm would eventually hug the southeast coast and make landfall near Cape Hatteras, North Carolina as a Category 1, destroying homes and trapping residents on Ocracoke Island. And even though it's been decades since a weather reconnaissance plane has gone down, the stakes are high with each mission. It's why Ragusa says he wouldn't do this job if he didn't have his family's support.
I think if my wife was too worried about it, she wouldn't let me do it. There are ways on the internet where you can keep an eye on the flights while we're airborne, and I think she keeps a little bit of an eye on us.
This is what they do.
We do train a lot for what we do.
24 hours a day when a storm threatens the United States. And for the few who can call themselves hurricane hunters, they say there's nothing like it.
I think ultimately it's the impact we can make, and knowing that the data that hopefully we collect is put to good use to hopefully ultimately save lives first and foremost.
It's nice to have people approach you in a restaurant and go, "Hey, aren't you a hurricane hunter?" And you go, "Yeah, thanks." "Why, yes, I am."